Following Jurgen Klopp's announcement that he will leave Liverpool at the end of the season, rumour and conjecture have flooded the media regarding who will replace him. Names like Julian Nagelsmann, Roberto De Zerbi and particularly Xabi Alonso have all been mentioned as possible replacements for the Liverpool legend. Whilst it looks like Xabi Alonso is the most popular candidate for the role, I'm not sure the transition will be as smooth as many fans expect, and actually, there's a better option for Liverpool. In this video, we're going to talk about why Liverpool's next manager should be Peter Bosz. Let's talk about Peter Bosz. Harry, what do you know about Peter Bosz?
Well, I mean, he's one of those, isn't he? He's an experienced manager. He's a very good manager. He's been across Europe. I mean, yet to dabble in the Premier League, but we've seen him do work at the likes of Dortmund final, now at PSV. So he knows his way around Europe pretty well. Yeah,
he's found success mainly in the Eredivisie. Obviously, his spells at Dortmund, Lyon and other clubs haven't really paid off, by Leverkusen as well, haven't really paid off, but his work in the Eredivisie has always been exemplary. Obviously, he played predominantly in his home nation of Holland. He did have a foray into Germany and France, but overall most of his playing career was spent in his native Holland, and then he spent most of his managerial career there as well, managing teams like Vitesse and Graafschap. Recently though, obviously, he is now the PSV manager, and I think that's brought a lot of eyeballs onto Peter Bosz because he's been doing some magnificent work. So PSV this season, at the start of the campaign, they lost Xabi Simons, Jarrod Branthwaite went back from loan to Everton, they lost Ibrahim Sangare and Philip Max. That's a huge loss. That's a lot of players who were instrumental to them last season that they lost. However, this season, and of course they lost their manager, Ruud van Nistelrooy, decided to quit. They lost everything basically, but Peter Bosz came in. They're unbeaten in the Eredivisie. They're 10 points clear at the top of the table. In fact, their only losses have come in the Champions League against Arsenal, so they have been incredible. And they're of course through to the Champions League round of 16. That's a pretty special season for PSV.
Yeah, I mean these are the kind of numbers that Ajax would usually put up a few years back.
Yeah, back when he was manager.
Exactly.
Took them to the Europa League final, of course.
I think it may, you could argue they've been helped out by the fact that Ajax have been so poor, but take nothing away from them. They're waltzing the league. Feyenoord can't keep with them, and realistically, it looks like it's going to be a very comfy ride towards the end of the campaign, and then another trophy to add to his repertoire.
Alright, so we've learned about Peter Bosz. Should we talk about what he would bring to Liverpool? Because I think there's some huge pros. I also think there's some slight cons we're going to talk about. But I do think he's a better fit stylistically than Xabi Alonso. And that's due to his play style. So Peter Bosz's play style is very attacking, is very aggressive. It's high pressing football. Now, if you know Jurgen Klopp, he's all about pressing. That's all he does. They just run around and try and win the ball back. But no, very good at generating transitions to the Klopp side. And Bosz is quite similar. I do think that leaves him with a little bit of a con at times because they are a little bit open defensively, but overall they do have quite a good system, and it is more similar to the Klopp style than Alonso's. Alonso is very possession-based football, very slow, very patient, whereas Bosz's is much more fast-moving, a lot more similar to Jurgen Klopp. So I think that's a huge advantage for him. Another is that the formation's quite similar. Obviously, by Leverkusen, Xabi Alonso plays a 3-4-3, whereas Bosz does play a 4-3-3, which I think suits Liverpool's squad better because obviously at the moment they play in a 4-3-3. So I do think, again, both stylistically and positionally, I think it just makes more sense to have Peter Bosz. I do think there are some cons as well, but pressing shape as well, very good. 4-2-4 suited to Liverpool. You'd have Curtis Jones who can push up into that front four and press. He's an absolute machine in that, so he could definitely do a job there. So I do think he'd again suit that system, and he's also very good at developing talent and coaching individuals. So we've seen that throughout his career. Obviously this season with Johan Bakayoko, who's someone we're going to get onto in a little bit, but also in the past with Julian Brandt, he turned him from a left winger into an attacking midfielder, and he was very good in that role. And the same with Lasse Schöne, he moved him from right wing into a defensive midfield role. So that's a huge shift to turn a right winger into a holding midfielder. So he's very good at changing positions, which could come very handy when it comes to Trent Alexander-Arnold. So is that something to consider? I would say so. However, he does come with his cons, and as I've mentioned, they are a little bit too aggressive, a little bit open defensively because they do commit a lot to the attack. I do also think they're very vulnerable to long balls. From montages and clips I've seen of them, a lot of their goals do come from balls in behind. Their goal against Ajax they conceded last weekend was a ball in behind that Robbie managed to bring down, and then Ajax flooded numbers forward, or PSV couldn't get back. He manages to hold on to the ball long enough to wait for Berghuis to make that run into the box. He cuts it back to him and he finishes it well. But it does mean that they are quite open, PSV, so I do have concerns there. However, Liverpool were one of the most open teams in the Premier League when they won their title. That's the reason they lost in that game to Watford. But mostly, they were fine because they have the players. And that could be a key difference. That rather than having the likes of Jordan Teze and players in that PSV backline, you would have Ibrahim Konate and Virgil van Dijk. It's a very different backline, isn't it? So, no disrespect to Jordan Teze, who's someone we're also going to touch on a little bit later. But yeah, he's also struggled at top clubs. Now, I think this is a huge risk because it's probably the biggest reason not to go for Peter Bosz. But I'm going to lobby against him. I'm going to lobby for him in a minute. But there is a huge problem with the fact that if you look at his stint at Borussia Dortmund, Bayer Leverkusen and Lyon, all three of those were over within 18 months, and all three of those went up in a blaze of not glory. It was fire, it was chaos, but it wasn't exactly perfect. And a lot of that is because he plays too aggressively. So there's a lot of space behind that does mean that if your side is they can concede quite easily, and if you keep conceding goals and keep losing games, morale then starts to drop and you see a huge problem. So he has struggled at top clubs before, and that does raise some questions as to whether he'd be the greatest fit. He also may not want the job, because he has said recently to Dutch media that PSV may be his last role. Now that may is giving me a little bit of hope here, because I do think he would take the job. I think that he's looking at May, and also he's saying PSV may be his last job. That may be 10 years. So he might not be ready for retirement. He might just be saying he's not going to go to a big club again and then potentially tarnish his legacy, because it's not worked out at big clubs before. But I think if Liverpool came knocking, he'd be hard pressed to turn them down. So what do you think? Do you think it's a good fit for Liverpool, or do you think there's too much of a risk?
I think it's an interesting one. I think a lot of people will say turn over a new leaf, try a new system, bring in Xabi Alonso, we all love him, all that. But I think that takes time, and the problem is if you go bringing in Peter Bosz gives you the luxury. I think if it won't take much for the players to adapt, and it should be that you can come in and success should be pretty much imminent if it paid off. They won't have to wait a couple of years for a rebuild or for players, new players to come, different players to go. The players they have now should be able to slot in to a Bosz style.
Yeah,
it is a big step up from PSV, and it's one of those. Does he want to gamble? As he said, he's coming towards the end of his managerial career. Does he want to have one last throw of the dice, throw himself in at Liverpool, and if it works, he puts his managerial status up in the clouds and he ends on a high?
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work, he's going to put a bit of a dampener on a pretty successful career, I suppose.
Well, to be fair though, he could go back to Feyenoord and complete the trifecta. Yeah. He's done Ajax and PSV, might as well tick him off. So if it does fail, that is a good option. I think he's a perfect sort of short-term stopgap. And while I know a lot of Liverpool fans are talking about having another Klopp-like dynasty with having Alonso there for 10 plus years, or getting close to 10 years like that Klopp 9-year dynasty, I just think they need someone to tie him over while they're in a bit of a transitional period. As we're about to talk about with contracts, a lot of big players, a lot of big names that will either be leaving or need to be renewed in the next sort of 6 months. So I do think there's a lot to be done there, and maybe having a short-term manager that you don't have to change too much in the system might be a good idea before looking at Xabi Alonso, who doesn't have much experience in the game. He's done very well with Leverkusen this season, but that's his only job in senior management. So it's very difficult for me to say that he'd be an instant success at Liverpool. I think he's a very good coach. Is he ready for the Liverpool role? That's an entirely different question. Yeah,
I think it's also one of those where you see, so right now, you've got Chelsea, you've got United, they're trying to build a kind of more of a long-term dynasty, a long-term success, but that's because they are down in the league, they are now rebuilding, they're spending the money, they're getting... Liverpool are still at the sharp end, and I think if they were to try and bring in Alonso now and go for another long-term managerial reign, would we see in the next 2 or 3 years they drop off and then they come back up as he builds up?
Well, they'd have to, because if they want to play Alonso's possession-based football, they're going to have to either teach these players to play very different football to what they've been playing for the last 9 years under Klopp. I know a lot of them haven't been there that long, but that sort of football, or you've got to completely turn over the playing squad, which is going to take more than a few years. So for me, I think there'll be a natural turnover in playing squad anyway over the next few years if you bring in Peter Bosz, and then maybe you look at a Xabi Alonso, or you see what Ange Postecoglou's doing. Because I think he'd be a really nice fit as well. I just don't think he's going to leave Tottenham. But in 2-3 years' time, if Tottenham aren't investing, there's every chance that he could take that role up. So let's talk about what Posh would do then. What Bosz would do. So we've obviously got the first thing to touch on is contract expiring. I think that's the best idea to get an idea of what this squad looks like. So we'll put up a graphic on screen now so you guys can see. But 2024 is Thiago Alcantara, Joel Matip. I think they're both done. Alcantara just picked up another injury. That probably is his last appearance for Liverpool. And Joel Matip, I think, has played his last game for Liverpool. Yeah. I don't think either of those are too concerned. But what I've highlighted on the screen is the three big ones that are happening in 2025. So these guys will have their contract expiring in 18 months' time. Whoever comes in the summer will have 12 months to get these renewed or work out how you're going to replace them. You've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Mohamed Salah, and Virgil van Dijk. Now that's a problem.
It is. It's a massive one, and I think they're three. Obviously, they're key players. They're very key players, but they're also players that I think it's interesting. Obviously, Van Dijk and Salah, I think are maybe more inclined to leave.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've come towards the end of their careers. You know, do they think they've done what they can? Do they think, okay, Klopp's gone, I'll give it a year to the end of my contract and then I'll go as well? For Trent as well, he's already made he's 25. He's already made over 300 appearances for Liverpool.
Very impressive.
Absolutely insane. Again, with Klopp going, does he try and see if he can get a better move?
I think, given he came through the academy, Trent's very Liverpool through and through. Yeah. And I would look at tying him down to a long-term deal. You can get a 5-year contract, 2029. I think that is exactly how you deal with that situation. Yeah. You can't risk him going. With the other two, you've got to hand an ultimatum over the summer. And you've got to get this done at the start of the summer. It's either you sign another year deal so that we don't lose you for free, and we'll say we could potentially say you next summer, or you've got to go now. Because they can't really risk losing both of those for free. I don't know. It depends what they want to do. If they think that the price they're going to get now outweighs the worth they'll get over from a season of them, then I guess sell them.
Yeah.
But obviously, if it doesn't come to that same, then I guess keep them for a season, and then you can let him leave for free next summer. Either way, you're going to have loads of wage bill to pay with because both of those are on huge contracts. But I think Salah could fetch 100 million still, right now.
Who though?
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
If he's interested in going.
No, they put in a bit. How much was last year's? They put in a bit in.
It was like well more, wasn't it? 200 something like that. So if you can get that from Saudi Arabia,
it's deadline day, weren't it? They just chucked 200 million at them.
But even so, I think you could find even a Barcelona would pay 80 and just mud their club finances again. So I feel like there's going to be a suitor out there. I don't know. I feel like you'd lose a lot by losing both of them and Klopp this summer. So I would say tie him down to another year contract, sell him next.
Yeah,
sell him in 2025.
They might go
or let them go for free.
I mean, we know Liverpool and Jordan Henderson are really good at making the game grow over there. So they might want to follow in his footsteps.
And then end up at Ajax.
Yeah.
And they get to go on a Peter Bosz when he goes back in a year's time. But yeah, so for me, I would try and renew all of them.
Yeah.
But with Salah and Van Dijk, I could only add another year because I do think both of those are close to the end of their career. However, in all cases, they've got to bring in some replacements. They've got to bring in some players that can play as those second options so they don't risk having nothing in case they do go for free next summer. And then 2026, which is something to think about, is Andrew Robertson, Ibrahim Konate, and Chalmin Kelleher. Now, I think that one's less of a problem. Yeah. I don't think Kelleher is their future goalkeeper, and they could even sell him this summer as long as they bring in a backup. So I don't think that's too much of an issue. But Konate and Robertson, there's two more big players that could be gone in 2026.
They could be, but I think with 2 years on it, there's a chance they also bring in more players. And
but I don't think you're going to get better than Konate.
You might not. You might, but in 2 years' time, you might. You don't. That's it. It's
maybe
it's a big 2 years. You might have some incredible footballers come through or something. And I think they'll buy. Obviously, with Matip leaving this year, they'll have to buy a centre half.
I agree. I think that's a huge thing.
It might be that they can already find someone that will be better than Konate in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see what we think they should do on that front. Let's have a look at the squad then, because I'll put it on screen now so that everyone else can have a look. But we're going to have a quick look at the squad because I think it's quite interesting to see the position and the depth they've got in position. So in goal, they've got Alisson and Kelleher as a backup. That's fairly fine. Their back four, though, I think definitely needs some improvement. So I've already taken Matip out of this. So you've got Van Dijk and Gomez options at left centre half, and then Konate and Kwanzaa as options at right centre half. Now, I think Konate and Kwanzaa are fine. Kwanzaa's shown himself to be very competent as a centre half. I think you need someone to replace Gomez in there. So I do think a left centre half is of really crucial that they go and sign. Then I think the other hole, right back's fine, Trent and Bradley, unless you decide to do something else with Trent. So is that an option? Because there's a space in midfield, I'd say. That right centre mid spot, you've got Szoboszlai and you've got Bobby Clark as your two options there. I think you need another in there. But the question is, do they use Trent as a right back or as a midfielder?
It's an interesting one.
What's easier to buy?
I'll tell you what, my biggest point would be how good do they think Bradley is? How far do they think Bradley can go? Because if he's good enough to start week in, week out for Liverpool, then you might want to push Trent on. But for me, it depends how much they view Bradley.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing to consider is how Peter Bosz plays. So Bosz, in build-up, plays with a three-back, situational back three. So the right back comes across and sits in a back three. Now, Trent's not very good at that. Trent plays him, either gets down the line or comes into midfield. Yeah. Bradley's quite similar, but as a backup, that wouldn't really matter. You could switch that quite easily. And the left back bombs on and the left winger comes inside. So actually, it would make a lot more sense to have a more traditional centre-half at right back or someone that has played that role before for Peter Bosz. So I think moving Trent to midfield would make sense. And then I think you could even use Szoboszlai, if you want to start both of them at the same time, as a left winger, because he'd cut inside and play as an attack midfielder a lot of the time. So that's something else to consider. The other huge hole in this team, I think, is that right wing slot, because they've got Salah and Ben Doak. I think Doak's a good talent, but you need someone else in there to play rotation with Mohamed Salah. And, of course, Salah may well leave in 2025. There's a lot to consider there, but I think the three positions we need to tackle, left centre-half, and then either right back or right centre midfield, and then right winger. So where do you want to start?
Start the back, right way forward.
I think that's a great idea. So, as you say, we'll start at the back then. Centre-half, left centre-half. Before I give my suggestion, who'd you put in the
problem
ring?
Is you have to find someone that will challenge as a Van Dijk replacement, but not be so good that they're gonna kick off a fuss when they're not playing every week.
But what if you tell them you're going to be a starter, guaranteed, nailed on starter the year after?
I mean, potentially so, and we know Liverpool centre halves are made of paper sometimes, and Konate's injured, bang, or Van Dijk picks up an injury and Konate's out, and then suddenly you're two backups, so you're starting centre halves for a month.
Yeah.
So I guess from that point of view, you want to bring in someone that can. That's it, because a couple of years ago they brought in, what was it?
Nat Phillips.
Yeah, Phillips.
I was in Kabak.
Yeah, I was at Kabak and Phillips. That was all. Oh, they need to find someone
hilarious for everyone else. But yeah.
Brilliant.
Any suggestions? Obviously, left centre halves rather than right centre halves. Any suggestions come to mind?
Not on my top of my head.
Fair enough. I think one rogue one, this is not my suggestion, but one rogue one I'd say is Jared Branthwaite. Obviously, he plays left centre-half, and obviously he's played under Bosz before. So he is Everton through and through, so it's difficult to do. That would be my biggest criticism, but he does fit exactly what they would need. My suggestion, though, is Alessandro Bastoni. I think, given the fact he's playing in Serie A, it's relatively easy to do because Inter need money, always, so they'd have to sell him. He's also very comfortable in possession. Bastoni's very good at the ball with his feet. He's got a great passing range, as you can see from his FBref profile on screen now. He's really good at switching the play as well. Those switches are a huge part of his game, and he's very good at pulling them off. And that will get the right winger into the game a lot more, whether that's Mohamed Salah or whether that's someone we're going to come on to in a minute. If they can build up on that left-hand side with Robertson getting high, then play the ball to Bastoni and look for that long ball, that long switch into the path of the right winger, that can open up a lot of space for Mohamed Salah. All other options would be very, very dangerous. So I think he'd suit that very well. How highly do you rate Alessandro Bastoni?
Yeah, no, very, very good player. I think in the Champions League final as well, we did a very, very good job. And again, going to Serie A, everyone's cheap as chips over there because they need as much money as possible. So you can get a decent deal. And I mean, the added bonus is he's brilliant in the air, and Liverpool love corners when you've got Trent on the pitch and you've got Salah who can put a ball in on the right on top of someone's crown. When you've got someone like Bastoni there to aim for, it's a certain goal.
Yeah, well, they've got Konate in there already, of course. Bastoni, aerials aren't too high, but I still think he's quite decent in the air. Other than, when I guess in Serie A the numbers are slightly inflated because all you play against is Giroud type target men. Yeah, Lukaku and Giroud are quite hard to win the ball, and Scamacca. They're all about 6'4" over there, so it's quite difficult to win headers. But yeah, I do think that is one area of his game that needs to work on. Obviously, his tackles aren't too high, but they don't need to be. He's playing in a side that are quite dominant, and he would be doing that again at Liverpool. Then I think it would make more sense to move Trent into midfield. I don't think he really suits that Bosz right-back role, so I think moving into midfield makes no sense. In terms of right-backs who can sit into a situational back three, now obviously City do this quite well. I don't think you're going to be able to pry away Kyle Walker. I think Trippier's a little bit past it, so looking down the English route is quite difficult to do. I actually think looking at someone who's played for him before would make the most sense. I'm sure you can probably guess who it is. It's Jordan Teze. I think Teze is a very good player. 24 years old, came through the PSV Eindhoven Academy, and he's been really strong this season. He captained the side recently for the first time. He's very much a leader in that dressing room, captained throughout the academy groups, so now, I think it's going to be difficult to pry away from PSV. They'll be keen not to lose Bosz and Jordan Teze and someone I'm about to touch on in a minute. But I do think he'd be a great addition. And obviously, he's got that experience playing under Bosz. He's also very comfortable in possessions. Possession stats, as you can see on screen, are very strong. He's got a great passing range as well. So I think he's a great option, Jordan Teze, and he fits the system perfectly.
Yeah, no, and it's big for if Bosz was to come in. It's big for a manager to be able to bring someone with him that he knows he can rely on, and he knows because he can turn to Teze and say, this is your your chance. It's someone he can believe in. He knows exactly how he's going to play, and he can look to Teze as one of those players that can help not only him adjust, but help the team adjust to the manager. And I think, especially if he's going to work well on the right hand side with a certain someone that you're about to mention, then that's good. It's good. Bosz is keeping what he likes with him as well.
Yeah, and I think this right wing I'm about to mention is exactly why you want Peter Bosz. And even if you don't get Bosz, I think you should try as hard as you can to bring him in. It's Johan Bakayoko. He's been incredible this campaign. I mean, his numbers really do speak for themselves. He's an exciting dribbler, very pacey, can go either way. Very similar to Salah in that regard. He can take it right, go past the defender and whip one into the box. When you've got Darwin Núñez in there, would be very dangerous. Or he can cut inside, have a shot where he's very dangerous as well. He has been incredible this season. His shot creating actions rank across the highest in Europe, so he's very strong in that. In fact, he'd come up 5th in the Premier League. Now, I know you have to adjust Eredivisie for Premier League, so his shot creating actions would likely drop off a little bit, but he would be 5th. Only Maddison, Odegaard, Elise and Saka are Premier League players with more, which to be mentioned in that sort of conversation is very strong. He's got more than Jeremy Doku this season, who a lot of people know as this fantastic tricky winger who's getting players into good positions to take shots. So he's very good at creating opportunities for others. He's also very good at taking opportunities himself. He's such an exciting young talent, Johan Bakayoko, and I think he suits exactly what Liverpool needs. It's a perfect Salah replacement in my eyes. I've been pining for years for them to sign Jeremy Doku, because I think he would be a perfect replacement. City have gone and done it. He looks incredible, obviously. I think it's the next best option, is to go and bring in Johan Bakayoko.
Yeah, no, he's one of those. He's a very exciting player, like a Doku, who, for the opposition, it's very scary, the way he just attacks the opposing defender. And it's so, you just never know what they're going to do. It's the excitement factor of watching them play. You always know that they're going to cause their fullback a tricky time. And as a defender, they're very, very hard to deal with and contain, because they've got so many, options in their locker that you just can't account for all of them. And it's a very, very big threat. And again, if they could get him in, linking up with Bosz and Teze, it's familiar for him, good surrounding, you think it'd pay off. You really would.
Yeah, I think he's probably their best option, unless I think he's a lot cheaper than their other options. I think Michael Elise would be a good option. He's also very creative, able to cut inside and strike one, but also able to go out wide and cross them in. So he's a very good player, but it's going to be difficult to pry away, especially given there's a lot of eyes on him at the moment. I mean, unless you're going to get Bukayo Saka, I don't think you're going to get anyone close to Salah's level. Yeah. Saka would be incredible, but it would also be very difficult to pull off. You're going to have to be around the 150 million mark, I would say, to get Arsenal to even consider losing him. So I think that's an impossible transfer to pull off. So for me, Johan Bakayoko is the most realistic and the most sensible option for Liverpool to go for. So how would they set up? So 4-3-3, as we say, Alisson in between the sticks. Then you've got back four of Teze, Konate, Van Dijk and Robertson. I think that's very strong. Obviously, Robertson will push high, and then they'll sit in a situational back three of Van Dijk, Konate, Teze. I still think Van Dijk starts unless they sell him this summer. Bastoni will rotate in there, of course. The midfield three, very difficult to decide how to compose this, but I'd have McAllister as the deeper midfielder and then Jones and Trent. So Trent would still sit a little deeper. So you end up with that same sort of pivot, which you've got at the moment a bit with Trent inverting. But it's just, you just do it. It's like you make it happen slightly differently. Then Jones can push forwards. Szoboszlai will come inside. Robertson makes the overlapping run. You end up with a 5 almost in attack with Nunes as that focal point. So, and then front three of Szoboszlai, which I think is an interesting choice because a lot of people would say, how do you get Diaz into the side to Jota, Gakpo? You've got a lot of attacking talent to fit in. And then Nunes and Salah. Now again, Bakayoko and Salah will rotate. Gakpo can rotate in with Nunez and Jota as well in that, but Jota can also play on the left, as can Diaz. So you've got a lot of options there. Arguably too many options, actually, if you use Szoboszlai as a winger. But also Szoboszlai can also play in midfield where Trent's playing, maybe not playing that deeper role, so maybe then you'd have to ask Jones to sit in rather than press forwards. But still, I think either way you create a really dangerous team for Liverpool. I think Peter Bosz is a really good fit. The biggest question is whether he'd want to take them.
Yeah, no, that's a very scary team on paper, and I think it's a team that would excite the Liverpool fans, but comes with it a lot of pressure. Could Peter Bosz come over to the Premier League and deliver that and deliver what's promised, or would he not like the pressure? I think it'd be a gamble for Liverpool more than it would be a gamble for him, because at the end of the day, he's getting on a bit now. He's
always got the safety of returning to the Eredivisie as well.
Because any of those clubs would welcome him with open arms, even if this does go badly. It's going to be one of those. I think the big problem for the fans is they are so set on wanting Xabi Alonso.
Yeah, I think that's the difficulty, isn't it? Because Alonso is the fan favourite, and by no means do I think Alonso is a bad appointment. I think he'd be a really good. I really rate Xabi Alonso. I really like him. I just wanted to attack this video from a slightly different angle. A load of people have already spoken about how Xabi Alonso would set up Liverpool. We do it slightly differently here. So, that's everything. Get involved in the comments. Do you think Xabi Alonso or Peter Bosz would be a better fit for Liverpool? And that's everything from us today. If you want to keep watching, there'll be a video covering Harry's face right now. So go and click it and keep watching. But thank you guys very, very much for watching. And we will see you next time.
See ya.